The phone vibrated at 3:07 a.m., and the screen burned. "We need to talk." My heart stumbled hard enough to wake the room. I pressed the hoodie to my face like it could answer for him. "Maya," said Ethan. "What is this?" The typing bubble appeared, then vanished, like a promise choking. The ceiling fan hummed a dull threat. Outside, rain tapped the window with tiny knives. Ethan said, "I'm sorry it's late." Those words felt like a cliff edge in the dark. I scrolled through memories and found our last call, all light and laughter. The silence now scraped like sandpaper on skin. Maya said, "Just tell me if I should stop waiting." The hoodie smelled faintly of his cologne and airports. And the phone lit again, then died to black. Ethan said, "We'll talk tomorrow." Tomorrow landed like a hammer on glass. I lay still, counting breaths like prayers. The night stretched, and the hoodie held me while the text held its knife. Morning arrived with a dull ache, and the hoodie carried the night like a bruise. Coffee steamed while my phone sat silent. Maya said, "I dreamed we were in the same time zone." The dream felt like a prank. The sun played. I scrolled to our first airport photo and touched the grin that used to be easy. Ethan said, "Work is chaos this week." He had typed that days ago, and it kept aging badly. The kettle clicked off like a verdict. Maya said, "If you need space, say it plain." The room smelled of toast and rain, and I remembered his laugh inside that fabric. The clock ticked loudly, pointing at nothing helpful. I packed my bag for errands and packed my heart back into the hoodie. The day would not wait, even if he did not answer. The bus shuddered through puddles, and every stop looked like doubt. I stared at the thread pulled loose on the cuff. Maya said, "Maybe love is made of waiting rooms." Notifications popped for everything, except him. A city ad flashed, a couple holding hands, and I looked away fast. Ethan said, "Let's call later," in my memory, and later kept moving the goalposts. The driver announced delays with a shrug in his voice. Maya said, "Tell me the truth before the silence tells it worse." The hoodie warmed my arms, and it felt loyal in a way humans rarely manage. I typed and erased the same sentence 3 times. The bus sighed, and I learned a new kind of tired. I stepped into a quiet bookstore to hide from the weather and my thoughts. The paper smell felt kinder than people. Maya said, "Give me anything honest, even if it ends us." I flipped open a journal and saw his name written on a list I once made of reasons to stay. A bell pinged with a new post on his feed. Ethan said, "Crew night," under a photo from last week. My stomach knotted at the stranger in the corner wearing a gray hoodie. Maya said, "It's a common hoodie, stop it." I closed the app, but the image stayed. The rain slowed to a hush that made every fear louder. I bought the journal like armor I could write in. Night returned early as if the sky was tired of my questions. I sat at the window with the hoodie and the new journal. Maya said, "What if the truth is simple and cruel?" I wrote lines that circled the same fear and never closed it. Across the street, a couple argued, and then one laughed, and then both walked away. Ethan said, "Tomorrow." In my head again, and the word felt like lint I could not pick off. I pressed my phone to the glass and caught my reflection. Maya said, "Answer me or release me." The city hummed, uninterested in small heartbreaks. I turned off the lamp and let the dark hold me steadier than hope. Maya sat on the floor with the journal open, each line tracing back to a memory that now felt heavier than the ink. She whispered, "I thought love was stronger than distance." The hoodie rested across her knees, carrying the smell of nights when he held her closer than silence. "Ethan once promised we'll make it, even if the miles kill us." His voice used to be an anchor, now it was a ghost. She remembered the nights she skipped dinners with friends just to stay awake for a 2-minute call. Her friends laughed at her devotion, but she wore it like armor. Maya said, "Why do I fight so hard for someone who drifts away so easily?" She turned the pages, finding lists of future plans that belonged to someone braver. The lamp flickered as if warning her, but she wrote another promise anyway. Her pen inked, If I wait, he'll prove me right. The campus cafe hummed with chatter, but Maya sat in a corner seat, staring at her untouched coffee. Her best friend Claire leaned in, eyes sharp with worry. Claire said, "He gives you crumbs, and you call it a meal." Maya forced a smile. "It's just the distance, it's hard for him too." The cafe clock ticked louder in the pause that followed. Claire stirred her drink, voice firm. Hard for him or easy for him to forget? Maya's throat tightened. She clung to memories of Ethan's warmth, moments that cost her hours of waiting. She said, "If I let go now, what does that make me?" Claire softened, hand reaching across the table. "It makes you someone who deserves peace." The words stung because they carried truth she wasn't ready to carry. Maya stared at the coffee steam fading, realizing some warmth leaves, even if you beg it to stay. That night, the video call finally connected. Ethan's background showed a messy desk, papers stacked like excuses. Maya smiled too quickly. "I missed you." His response was delayed by a weak connection, and something else she couldn't name. Ethan said, "I've been swamped, barely sleeping." His eyes darted off screen, chasing something unseen. Maya laughed softly, hiding the sting. "I waited up every night, just in case." He nodded without looking at her. "You shouldn't do that." The silence stretched, suffocating. Maya asked, "Do you even want this anymore?" He froze, then forced a grin. "Of course I do." But the smile was crooked, and the lag felt honest in ways his words weren't. She whispered, "I just need to know I'm not waiting for nothing." The call glitched, his face fragmenting into pixels, and the truth fractured with it. The next morning, Maya sat at the breakfast table while her mother folded laundry nearby. Her mother said, "You look thinner. Tired. Is it him again?" Maya exhaled slowly. "He's just busy, Mom." The older woman raised an eyebrow. "Busy men still make time when they care." The words cut deeper than intended. Maya traced circles on the table, remembering how many times she had defended Ethan to herself, to her friends, to family. Her mother placed a folded shirt gently. "You deserve someone who shows up, not just someone who calls sometimes." Maya said, "I believe in him, I have to." Her voice cracked at the end, betraying her strength. Silence filled the room, broken only by the shuffle of fabric. The hoodie across the chair back looked heavier than the laundry. That evening, Maya sat on the park bench, journal in hand. Children laughed in the distance, reminding her of the future she once imagined. She wrote, "He is worth the wait, even if no one else believes it." A breeze flipped the page, like even the wind questioned her resolve. Claire's words replayed, her mother's warning echoed, and Ethan's silence pressed harder. Maya said aloud, "Love shouldn't feel like begging." She closed the journal and hugged the hoodie tighter, like it was his stand-in. The sun dipped behind clouds, painting the park in muted gold. She whispered, "Please mean it when you say tomorrow." The bench chilled under her, the sky dimmed, and she realized she had given pieces of herself away just to keep the idea of him alive. The promised call slid past midnight and kept running. Notifications sparked for sales and strangers, while his side stayed dark. Maya said, "Please just tell me if you are in or out." She counted the minutes like loose change. Ethan once wrote, "Tonight for sure," and the words now felt counterfeit. She tried to read, but each line dissolved into his absence. The hoodie held warmth she could not find in his replies. Maya said, "I am not asking for the moon. I am asking for your voice." A siren threaded the street and faded like hope on a timer. "Oh." She typed a message and backspaced the entire thing. The silence learned how to breathe, and it filled the room. She lay still, and realized waiting had become the whole relationship. Morning cracked open with a ping that was not him. A friend sent a clip from a bar across town, and music bled through the screen. Ethan laughed beside a woman with keen eyes and a fearless smile. Maya said, "That's fine, he can have a life," and her chest disagreed. The woman tagged him, with a caption that felt private. Claire texted, "You seeing this, or should I shut up for once?" Maya answered, "I am fine, and the lie pinched. She studied the frame the way people study wreckage, careful and afraid. Ethan said, "Phone died last night, hours later, like a bandage for a broken bone." She whispered, "Then why did the night love you enough to film it?" The coffee went cold while she watched the clip on repeat. The distance grew teeth and bit down. She planned a late call with candles and a patient heart. The laptop camera framed a version of Faith that had survived too many storms. Maya said, "I want tonight to be ours." And the clock nodded. Minutes stacked in clumsy towers and fell over. Ethan did not arrive. A message landed at dawn, knocked out after work, "Sorry." She read it twice and felt her spine go quiet. Maya said, "I waited 3 hours and it felt like 3 years." He replied, "You shouldn't wait up," as if the problem was her devotion. The candles became little graves for plans. She learned how to say nothing without surrendering. The sun rose, but the night was still in her bones. She walked through rain to move the ache around. The crosswalk blinked its tired warning, and cars hissed past like secrets. Maya said, "Give me a plan that is real and near." The message sat unread, gathering digital dust. She imagined flights, budgets, calendars, and none of them included him fully. Ethan wrote hours later, "Let's figure it out soon," and the word soon felt elastic and cruel. She paused under a bus shelter and counted all the Mabes. The hoodie soaked at the cuffs, heavier with each drop. She said, "I cannot keep drowning on dry land." A bus arrived and left without her because the choice hurt less. The rain made the city tender, and she envied it. She pressed the phone to her chest and felt nothing answer back. Back home, she pulled the hoodie close and froze at a scent she did not own. Citrus and something floral floated where his cologne used to live. Maya said, "Maybe it brushed against a stranger in a crowd," and doubt laughed. She lifted the cuff and felt a thread rougher than memory. Ethan wrote, "Miss you," and the words landed like a paper boat in storm water. She answered, "Then find a way to show it," and hit send before fear could edit her. The room seemed to tilt as if the truth had weight. She tucked the hoodie into the closet, and it still filled the air. Maya said, "Do not make me beg for the bare minimum." The door clicked shut, and the fabric kept whispering. She sat on the floor and chose not to cry so the choice would count. Maya's phone buzzed with a notification that did not belong to her. A photo showed Ethan at a gathering, his arm around someone else wearing a hoodie identical to hers. She whispered, "That cannot be the same one," but her chest knew better. The fabric in the image carried the same faded seam, the same fray she used to smooth. Ethan texted minutes later, "Busy tonight, talk soon," as if nothing burned. She closed her eyes and let silence answer instead. Maya said, "How many things of me live with someone else now?" The hoodie in her closet felt like an imposter, still heavy with borrowed scents. Her pulse kept counting truths she did not want. The night pressed hard against the window, and the lamp light trembled across the page of her journal. The word betrayal scratched itself between her lines without asking permission. Claire rushed into the cafe when Maya asked to meet. She shoved the phone across the table. "Tell me I am overreacting," Maya pleaded, voice shaking. Claire stared, then said, "That's your hoodie, down to the thread." Maya's stomach dropped, air heavy with roasted beans and betrayal. She gripped her with both hands, seeking steadiness. Claire said, "You cannot keep pretending distance is the only problem." Maya tried to laugh, but it broke midway. "Maybe it's just a coincidence," she whispered. Claire shook her head, eyes full of hurt for her friend. "Coincidence does not tag him in photos." The cafe buzz turned sharp, voices louder, lights too bright. Maya pressed her palm against her chest and felt her heartbeat argue with her denial. That night, Maya paced the apartment, hoodie draped across her arms like a riddle. She whispered, "If you gave this away, why leave me the ghost of it?" The fabric smelled foreign now, citrus mixed with something floral. She held her phone, screen blank, waiting for Ethan's name to glow. Hours turned heavy, the ceiling fan clicking louder than any reply. Maya typed, "Do you still love me?" and let it sit unsent. She dropped onto the floor, clutching the hoodie close enough to hurt. Ethan's last message repeated in her mind, "Busy tonight," an excuse stretched thin across betrayal. She said, "If I break alone." The closet gaped open, like it had been keeping secrets all along. Shadows collected at the edges of the room, daring her to admit the truth. The next day, Maya walked into the library where Ethan once promised to study with her. The memory bit deep, sharper now with distance. She carried the journal, hoping the quiet would swallow her. A notification pinged, and it was his voice note. Ethan said, "I did not think you would care about that hoodie." Maya froze, blood rushing to her ears. She played it again, his tone too casual for the weight it carried. She whispered, "You gave away the one thing I held on to," her voice shaking between aisles of strangers. The journal page blurred as ink smeared under her hand. The silence of the library felt heavier than any crowd. For the first time, hope cracked loud enough to hear. That evening, she stood at the riverbank, city lights reflecting across restless water. The hoodie hung from her arms, heavier with every breath. Maya said, "You gave it away, but I was the one who slept in it every night." The words scattered in the wind. She lifted it, arms shaking, then pulled it back to her chest. "I cannot let go yet," she admitted, breaking her own resolve. A message lit up her phone, Ethan saying, "Don't make this bigger than it is." She laughed once, a sound with no joy. The river kept flowing, uncaring, carrying away secrets and scents. She whispered, "It was always bigger than you realized." She turned her back to the water, hoodie pressed like a shield, the truth sharper than cold air. The day dragged like wet clothes on a line, and every hour I rehearsed sentences that tasted like metal. When the sky bruised purple, I pressed call and felt my pulse climb the stairs first. Ethan answered with a soft hey that tried to sound normal. I said, "I need the kind of truth that survives daylight." He cleared his throat, buying time with air. I said, "The hoodie in those photos looks like mine, and I need you to say it isn't." He went quiet long enough for the room to tilt. He said, "You're making this bigger than it is, we're fine." I laughed, and it cracked in the middle. I said, "I sleep in that thing like it's a promise, and I want to know who sleeps in it now." The street outside hissed with rain like applause for a scene I hated. He sighed and the call filled with distance. I said, "Do not ask me to be calm while you stay careless." He said, "I gave it away one night after a gig. She was cold. It wasn't a thing." The word she detonated in my chest. I said, "Her name is Lena, and the tag says more than you do." He tried to laugh, but it sounded like a door jamming. He said, "It was a kind moment, not a betrayal." I said, "Kindness does not borrow from someone else's heartbeat." He looked off screen like the truth was hiding in a corner. I said, "You knew what it meant to me, and you handed it to a stranger with my memories still inside it." He said, "I planned to tell you, I just didn't want drama." The word drama hung like a neon sign over everything. I said, "You did not avoid drama, you outsourced it to my insomnia." He said my name softly, as if gentleness could fix arithmetic. I stared at the pixelated version of him, and counted the pieces that no longer fit. A second voice drifted into the call, muffled but bright, and my stomach recognized it before my mind did. "Well," I said, "is she there right now?" He flinched and moved the camera like a curtain. He said, "She's just a friend who crashed on the couch." I said, "The couch that smells like my nights." The silence was a confession wearing casual clothes. He said, "You're the one I want, you know that." I said, "I know that you like being wanted. That is not the same thing." A shadow crossed the frame, and I caught a flash of her profile. I felt the floor pull at my knees, steady and cruel. He said, "Please don't turn this into an end." I said, "I am not turning anything. I am witnessing it." The call held both of our breaths, and none of our faith. I said, "Here is what I need, and there is no poetry in it." My voice stopped shaking long enough to build a bridge. I said, book a ticket and show up, or ship the hoodie back with a letter that admits what you did. He blinked, counting costs that were never mine. He said, work is wild, flights are impossible this month. I said hard is not the same as impossible, and love is not the same as convenient. The room seemed brighter, like the lamp approved. He said, you're punishing me for being human. I said, I am protecting myself for the first time in months. The rain softened, and the quiet felt like new oxygen. I said, choose in clear words, not in delays. He said nothing, and the nothing said everything. I stared at the call timer, and felt my patience age 10 years. He whispered, I can't make it happen right now, and the rope finally snapped. I said, then send the hoodie back and leave me the silence you already practice. He said my name like a question that arrived too late. I said, I asked for your voice, and got excuses dressed as plans. The screen flickered, as if the call wanted to end on its own. He said, don't do this. I said, you did this when you forgot what belonged to us. The city hummed through the window, indifferent and honest. I pressed end and let the room inhale without him. The hoodie hung on the chair, heavy with borrowed weather. I touched the cuff once, then turned off the lamp. In the sudden dark, I heard my heartbeat sound like a door closing. The silence after the call stretched like fabric pulled too thin. Maya sat on the floor with her back to the bed, hoodie draped across her knees. She whispered, this is what letting go sounds like. The clock ticked louder than her breath. She replayed the last words in her mind, each one scratching like broken vinyl. Ethan had given nothing but absence disguised as affection, and now absence was all that remained. She lifted the hoodie to her face, inhaling a scent that was no longer hers. She said, I will not beg you any more. The night felt different, less sharp, more final. She closed her eyes and let the tears fall without apology. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed, and life went on without her permission. She said softly, goodbye, even if you never hear it. The word goodbye finally made sense when silence agreed. Morning brought a cruel kind of clarity. Maya moved through the kitchen like a stranger in her own home. Her mother watched carefully, folding dish towels with quiet judgment. Her mother said, you look lighter, though your eyes are swollen. Maya forced a small smile. I ended it. The older woman placed the towels down gently. It hurt, but maybe now you can breathe. Maya swallowed hard and whispered, I thought love could survive anything. Her mother replied, sometimes survival means leaving, not clinging. The words sank into her like medicine she hated, but needed. The kettle whistled, sharp and final, and she poured tea into a chipped mug. She wrapped both hands around it as if heat could fill the emptiness. Silence rested between them, but this silence felt less cruel. It carried something like relief. Claire knocked on the door that evening, carrying takeout and blunt honesty. She dropped the bags on the table and said, so it's finally over. Maya nodded. Yes, I ended it before it ended me. Claire sighed. Took you long enough, but I'm proud of you. The food steam filled the space, comforting and distracting. Maya picked at noodles, appetite lost but spirit steadier. Claire said, he didn't deserve your patience. Maya replied, maybe I didn't deserve to carry so much weight alone. Claire leaned forward, her eyes sharp but kind. You deserve better, not less. Maya let the words sit, heavier than the food untouched. She said, I believed in him more than he ever believed in me. Claire smiled faintly. Now believe in yourself. The night felt warmer with someone else keeping watch. Later, Maya walked alone through the park, journal tucked under her arm. The air was cool, and the sky streaked orange against fading blue. Children's laughter echoed faintly as swings creaked in rhythm. She found a bench and opened to a fresh page. She wrote, today I stop waiting. Her hand trembled, but the ink held firm. She whispered, this is the start, not the end. The hoodie was still with her, heavy on her frame, but it felt less like a chain and more like a relic. She stared at the words until they anchored her. The wind rustled leaves across the path, scattering like old doubts. For the first time in months, her breath did not feel borrowed. She closed the journal and let the pen rest. She said softly, "I am still here." The truth felt steady when spoken aloud. That night, she placed the hoodie back into the closet, folding it carefully like an artifact. She said, "You were once a promise. Now you are only fabric." The words cracked but did not break her. She lit a candle, the flame steady, illuminating the room with quiet grace. She whispered, "I will not forget, but I will not carry you anymore." The closet closed with a soft click that sounded like healing. Maya sat by the window, journal at her side, candlelight flickering across her face. She looked out at the city lights blinking in calm defiance. She said, "I gave him all my waiting, now I give myself tomorrow." The silence in the room no longer mocked her. It simply was. And that was enough for now. She leaned back against the sill and let the night hold her without conditions. Morning opened like a clean page, and I let the quiet arrive without apology. I brewed coffee and did not check for his name. I said, "Today, I will speak to myself first." The words tasted steady. I scrolled through old photos and archived them, not out of anger but mercy. Claire texted a sun emoji, and I sent back a small heart. I said, "I am still sad, but I am not lost." I made a list titled after, and it filled with simple verbs that did not require permission. I stood by the window and breathed until the hurt felt smaller than the room. I said, "If love returns, it will knock with both hands." The cup cooled, and I did not chase the heat. At the cafe, Claire waved from the corner and held me like news worth keeping. She said, "You look like you slept." I laughed. I did, and the night did not argue. We shared a muffin and let the crumbs testify that life goes on. Claire said, "You do not need closure from him to close this." I traced the rim of my cup and felt my hands stop shaking. "Ah," I said. "I mailed the key back, not the memory." She nodded, eyes bright with relief. We made weekend plans that did not include apologies. The room hummed with other people's mornings, and I liked being one of them. I said, "I will not edit myself smaller again." Claire smiled wide and called it growth. On the walk home, my phone buzzed with a name that once felt like oxygen. Ethan said, "Can we talk tonight?" The message sat there like a test I no longer needed to take. I stood beneath a tree and watched light move through leaves like a new language. I said, "I am not a spare hour on your calendar." I typed and deleted, and then typed less. I replied, "Not tonight." The ground did not open, the sky did not fall, and my pulse did not sprint. I put the phone away and let the message grow old. I said, "I choose peace that does not ask for proof." That evening, I opened a box and placed the hoodie inside like a chapter returned to the shelf. I wrote a note that only I would read later. It said, "I release what does not hold me with care." Tape hissed, and the cardboard closed without drama. I carried it to the donation counter and felt the weight shift from my arms to the world. The clerk smiled, a small everyday smile that felt perfect. I said, "Thank you," and meant it twice. On the way out, I caught my reflection and did not look away. I said, "I am allowed to keep warm without history." Night settled soft, and the city pulsed like a steady heart outside my window. I lit a small candle and opened the journal to the very last page. I wrote, "I loved hard, and I learned harder." I said, "I forgive the girl who waited and the boy who didn't." The room felt larger than the ache, and that felt like victory. I turned off notifications, and the silence stayed kind. I set the phone down screen first, and let the dark speak gently. I lay back and found sleep before sorrow could bargain. When morning came, I knew the ending was not a door but a road, and it finally pointed toward me.